Um, I started with an intro. Rob kind of covered this, but I'll just to sort of put this in context. My background, I started as a media agency founder in the earlier days of the internet when it was more of a level playing field, and I was catering to small businesses and entrepreneurs. And then, lo and behold, started finding my way to bigger brands, and you can see some of these here. What's great about the agency business is you really get access to a lot of different clients. You see a lot of diversity, which helps you compare and contrast and say, all right, well, this is how they do it in retail. Maybe we could learn something from this and apply it to hospitality or something like that. And the downside is in the agency world, you do the work of three people. Everybody is burnt out and tired. And when I had a kid on the way, I needed a change, and I was fortunate to get a job offer at Google where I worked with global automakers. So I was running global business for General Motors and Fiat Chrysler and a few other clients, and eventually took control of strategy for the entire vertical. So a few years ago, at the time, this was about $1 billion business for Google. Around the world, every team that was working on automotive business, would work with our team to sort of raise the ceiling while raising the floor. So what could we do to grow at that scale, which is always challenging. So it became very strategic, real partner-driven type work. I spent a little more time in the ad industry and had the benefit of working on some other amazing brands, AT&T, Target, and so on. But eventually, I reached an inflection point that a lot of people reach in their career. Am I going to sell ads my whole career? The answer was clearly no. And I wanted to get into something more impact-driven. And so EdTech really was where I wanted to kind of pivot. And really, I wasn't selling education. The teams that I worked on, what we were selling was economic mobility. So in a world where higher education and the resulting career opportunity was becoming increasingly exclusive, there are all these emerging alternative education models that were looking to right-size that opportunity and bring it to the masses. And so what we were doing was using these virtual learning platforms, such as the one that I was working with at Udacity, now part of Accenture. We were doing large-scale cohorts to upskill people in technology skills like UX design or digital marketing or business analytics, so that they could go from being in a dead-end career to doing something that really motivated them and inspired them and helped them enter the middle class. So we're selling economic mobility, and we're doing it through government entities like the Department of Labor, or tapping into ARPA funding from the Biden administration and their COVID recovery plan, right? So it was really exciting. We also worked with enterprises. And in these past few years, I had the benefit of working with companies like T. Rowe Price and Amazon and AutoZone, who wanted to upskill their incumbent workers to give them a chance, so that if there's high turnover in the warehouse and we don't want to let those people leave, how about we find the best and brightest, sponsor them to go through a boot camp, learn Java or .NET, some technology that can really give them a foundation skill set. And then if they pass, which almost 100% of them do, there's a job waiting for them on the IT team. So really exciting work that really kind of taught me what is mission-driven work. That's how I ended up founding Mission Flywheel, to pull all this together, all of the skills and abilities that you acquire working with big brands, learning from your clients, these global CMOs and their teams, and then applying it to real mission-driven work. So that's what I do now. Now, the way Mission Flywheel works, if you think about the way a business goes to market, you start with a mission and vision, hopefully. In there, you start to operationalize that mission and vision and align to commercial targets. So we're going to use that vision to propel us to a certain level of performance. And then from there, what we're hoping to do is attract customers, turn them into revenue, keep them in the mix, and keep them growing. And in the process, showing investors, hey, this is a real business. We can do this over and over and over again, and that's why you should be investing in us. And the way it works at Mission Flywheel is very similar, with one key difference. So we start with that mission and vision. We look at commercial targets alongside social impact targets. What are the things that we're trying to do to make an impact on a community level, not just on the income statement and the balance sheet? And what that eventually does is drive the same level of customer growth and investor attention, but in the middle is this critical piece, which is outcomes. So we all know what commercial outcomes look like. It's Can you drive top line revenue? Can you drive EBITDA and some of those profitability metrics? Can you retain customers and drive customer lifetime value? All of that is important. But if it's social impact, we're also looking at, how much economic opportunity have we created? How many metric tons of CO2 have we pulled out of the atmosphere? That kind of stuff. And there are really exciting ways to measure that and then bring it back to, have we validated our mission and vision? So I won't belabor this. This is a little bit of the how, like what is it that we actually do to achieve the aforementioned. But I'm not here to sell you. I'm here to actually, hopefully educate you on ways that I've seen this work. So let's get into the tech stack, which really is kind of the backbone of your systems and your operation. Nowadays, you certainly don't want to run the business out of your head. The next best thing is Post-it notes, but that's not going to work. Spreadsheets, a lot of people use spreadsheets in the early days, and then at some point, somebody's going to come in and say, you can't run your business on spreadsheets anymore. You need technology to operationalize this business, and that's what we're here to talk about. So think about it like a pyramid. You've got foundational technology at the bottom, and then you work your way up to different point solutions that can help you really kind of build an end-to-end technology-enabled operation. There are 1,000,001 ways to do this, so don't take my way as the only way, but I'm going to show you how I've seen it work. You start with something fundamental. And today we'll talk about the CRM as a fundamental piece of your tech stack. This is illustrative, right? You might find, for example, that it's not really a CRM. Maybe your business is more geared towards something that's more externally focused, like marketing automation. Well, that eventually does factor into the mix. It's just a question of your priorities. So if you have a CRM in the middle, what are some of the things you plug into your CRM? The way that you generate leads or do prospecting for new customers. The way that you take those customers and drive their growth on your platform, what we call customer success. Sales intelligence. How do we know in this vast sea of the B2C and B2B opportunity where to focus our efforts? Because if we don't focus, we're going to run out of money, we're going to run out of time, people are going to burn out. And I mentioned marketing automation. That's another one where you just try to build a little bit of muscle memory and then automate as much as possible. But if you keep going more and more granular, imagine, hey, what if we're closing so many contracts that we need a solution to automate that more? Because maybe the contracts are 95% identical across the board and only one or two things need to ever get swapped out. Well, if you're doing that manually, that's going to become a real bottleneck, and that's going to hold back your profitability because you're going to need people to do it unless you invest in the technology. Same goes with sales enablement, right? So what if you have 3 types of customers that you cater to? Well, you should have 3 types of marketing messages that go out in front of them, speaking to their unique needs. And that means 3 sets of collateral. It might mean 3 different ways of communicating. So sales enablement would be the function that basically says, hey, customer archetype A has this whole bundle of documentation, and we want to make sure we're super organized so that we don't accidentally give them something that should go to customer B. Sales quotes and proposal management, similar to the contracts, right? What if in the early days, you are catering to a certain customer type, and you can automate 2/3 of what you're giving them so that the only thing you have to swap in and out is, maybe there's a certain type of message for the industry they represent. And if they're ready to spend $5,000 or they're ready to spend $15,000, you might have, maybe different bullet point list of the different features you're willing to offer in a proposal. Automate that if you can. Maybe it's going to reduce manual error and it's going to improve your throughput and your efficiency. Sales engagement's an interesting one. I mean, if you ever have done cold calling or written, 100 cold emails, you know how tiring that can be. It's important because we all have to fish in the open waters. We all have to start knocking on doors. Everybody does it. But there are some amazing platforms out there that can really kind of be your right hand and make you 100 times more productive. If you got to do it, you might as well have a little bit of a spring in your step. And you can get way up into like nirvana, where Sales analytics and reporting basically tell you how effectively are you doing all of the aforementioned, and what are your opportunities to optimize to get even more value out of the work you're doing. Now, you're not going to be investing in this. There's a reason it's at the top of the pyramid in yellow. You're not probably going to be doing this for months or years, but it's helpful to have a vision of what that should look like. Data enrichment, it's the same thing, right? So if you have a website that's really active and you get a lot of leads from people submitting forms, what happens if they put in fake names or fake companies, or the emails that they put are personal emails and you can't really utilize them the same way if they put in their company email? There are some amazing tools out there that can automate in the background, clean up that data just with the click of a button instead of painstakingly having to go and dig up all that information. So that's like super sophisticated, but it all comes back to what is the centerpiece of your tech stack. And for today's purposes, we'll talk about the CRM. I built these slides with the intention of you having a copy of these afterwards. And so I'm not going to read this stuff line by line, but everything I just discussed, if you want examples, you want to start looking and, sort of educating yourself on what these platforms can do, you can refer to this slide. So choosing your centerpiece. So in this case, we're talking about the CRM. Just give me a quick show of hands. Like, do we have a basic comfort with what a CRM does and how it can be useful to the business? More or less, Isabel? I saw a slight nod. A little bit? Okay. Well, I've got some content here which will get us all on the same page. So, basically what we're saying is this is a master database of your customer. And it starts with, who are they? Name, email. Okay, great. They're on the list. That means there's some value. But what is their value to us? Are they a paying customer? Are they a long-time customer? Are they a prospect? Are they somebody that has never heard of us, but we would love to be in business with? Well, those are 4 different categories, and you could have infinite number of them to segment them and say, we're going to have them all in one place, but we're going to treat them differently. And then you get into, well, where do they live? If they're in New York, do we have to sell to them or market to them a little differently than if they were in California? What segment do they represent? Are they prepared to invest $100, $1,000, $1 million, right? When did they last engage with us? If we sent out an email blast and 10% of the people clicked, maybe we should look at those 10% of the people a little differently because they're more engaged. Maybe they get a different message the next time because we know something behaviorally differentiates them from everyone else. So that's, you could really go into infinity with all the different ways that a CRM can be helpful. But I'm going to start with why build around the CRM? Because it works. The businesses that put the CRM at the center, at the core of their tech stack, see a huge benefit. Why? Because at some point, if you're going to grow, unless you're going to get all your money from 1 or 2 customers, you're going to need a platform where you can manage them. And you can see well over 8x ROI, just from implementing a CRM. They're not expensive. And we'll talk about cost in a moment. Other data, 83% of respondents in this survey, executives across a whole range of businesses, saw positive ROI. Almost 9 out of 10 said it helped them achieve their goals. And a strong majority said it also improved customer retention. Now, there's a lot of things that it takes besides the CRM to improve customer retention. So I'm guessing that the people that answered no, it's not because of the CRM necessarily. It might also be because they didn't invest in other things. But clearly, these are good indicators. So let's talk about like the crawl, walk, run approach to CRM. In the early days, what could you do just to understand the basic applicability of it? So let's look at what is the strategic value? Well, we know we want a system that helps us manage this growing list of customers. We can put it into a format where we know it's portable. We can export it if we ever needed to do an email blast in a different platform. We can export it if we want to invite all these people to connect on LinkedIn, etc. We could start thinking about what other data is useful. I gave you some examples before, but you know your business, you know what data would be useful, right? CRMs nowadays, they understand this is a new world where data privacy and security is paramount. So it's not even really a question of how, but it's important to convey that to your customers, that their data is safe with you. You will start to get insights over time. because as you interact with these customers, right, if that list grows from 100 to 1,000 to a million, you're going to start to see that not all of them engage with you at the same level. And you'll get some insights. And then finally, building those personas and tailoring your communications. I gave you examples of that before. Over time, you could start to create real segments. And it might no longer be based on did they click on the last email. It might be based on how often do they buy a floral arrangement, or how many different books did they buy on Amazon, right? Or how many people did they refer for the restoration of shoes. So you can start to use that to then personalize, further customize those marketing, sales, and service efforts. You can automate this so it's less your hands on the keyboard and more things happening in the background. You get data on how are they responding and what works best, so I can double down on that. This is also helpful, by the way, when you have investors and they want to say, they say to you, tell us what you're going to earn in 3 months or in 12 months, right? Because we're giving you a bunch of capital now. We want to know that we're going to get it back and that you're going to deliver on your promises. So for forecasting, it's critically important. And it'll help you make decisions, strategically. Do we, for example, in Jared's case, right, is B2C our most profitable business? We've invested a little in B2B. There's some promise. Well, the data might tell you, yeah, B2B is a gold mine, and you really can confidently push forward because we've seen enough to say that it's going to be, a huge boon for our business. And finally, you're going to start also thinking about CRM as a true centerpiece, which means if that's the hub, what are the spokes? What are the other things you're putting around it to really have a customer-centric business? Nowadays, I would argue there's no industry where customer centricity is not the religion that you have to follow, because the arrival of the internet basically put the customer at the center of everything. There is no business nowadays where the customer does not dominate. And that's a good thing, right? That keeps things competitive. It keeps business innovating. And you need to do the same. The good news is it's not so hard to do. So what would it look like to take that all to the next level? Would be to really identify those customers that are no longer just ordinary customers, but your advocates, the people who become part of your marketing and can really bring your business to the next level without you having to spend more money, right? Predictive analytics are a great way to tap into all of that. You're invested in this technology because you can start to really look at the data and let the systems identify patterns that you can then activate. This is where the AI and the machine learning come in, right? I mean, imagine if you're capturing all this great data in your CRM about their buying habits and preferences, and now the AI can write an outbound email and you don't have to lift a finger because it already knows that this person tends to buy in the summertime and they tend to respond well to this type of promotion, and they actually have a pretty good track record of referring to other customers. Well, now you've got a very good profile on which to personalize that outbound message. These tools can do this today. Finally, integrating CRM into business planning. So expanding into new markets. The B2B example is a good one. With the shoe restoration, right? I mean, it sounds like there's different levels of engagement, different levels of product that these customers can buy into. So helping your upsell motion and take them from A to B, right? Take them from X to 10X. All of this stuff matters in a big way. And so I want to talk about HubSpot as an example, because I want this to be actionable to you. If you were to invest in a CRM, I do not get any kickbacks for this. I just believe HubSpot is the best platform for a growing business. And HubSpot CRM, let's just be clear, HubSpot CRM is a product within the HubSpot stack. So effectively, if we're talking about systematizing your business, we're not just talking about CRM, but I'm going to show you how you grow beyond CRM. So what can it do? The free product can do an amazing amount of stuff. It is built as a centerpiece to then give you marketing automation, sales operations, customer service, CMS if you have to build a lot of pages on your website. It's good for e-commerce. And then operations to manage all of it seamlessly and make it work with your accounting and financial systems and all the rest. So getting back to the CRM, what can you do right out of the box? You can store up to 1,000 contacts for free. You can send mass emails up to 2,000 a month and get analytics on that. You can build landing pages and integrate them seamlessly with your website. You can build forms. So if you want to invite someone to sign up for your newsletter, or hey, sign up to get more promotions, you can do that within the free product. And then schedule meetings, right? Maybe it's the kind of product where you want to build a relationship. Certainly for my business, I do this a lot. We sell a knowledge product. They need to get to know us and make sure we know what we're talking about before we can sell. And so the free product can do a lot in this realm. But then you can start to upgrade, and you can start to look at these other systems where the CRM can plug in via integrations. So how does it play with your email? You can start to streamline communication and run it all seamlessly from within HubSpot. You can integrate the meeting scheduler with your own calendar. You can store and manage all of your marketing collateral within HubSpot. And then when you add it to an email, you can see if somebody looked at it or not. You can see how long they looked at it. From a productivity point of view, if you guys are using Slack, for example, there's all kinds of integrations. Same goes with financials. So this isn't the scope isn't really to discuss how this stuff works, but just to show you the breadth of applications that come from a simple piece of technology at the core. In Sales Hub, right, it further breaks down into all of these different sort of permutations of integration. And I won't go through these line by line, but you can certainly look at this afterwards. Ditto with marketing, right? Look at all of these. Social media, web analytics, design tools, all of this stuff with CRM at the center. Why? Because you're a customer-centric business and you're trying to get as much of it into the system as possible. So hopefully that was clear. We covered a lot there in lightning speed, but I want to really kind of bring it into, out of the theoretical and more into the practical. Later on, we'll get into a case study, but I want to give you just a couple of talking points that kind of explain to you how we merge theory with practice. So I'll assume you're all comfortable with the concept of a sales funnel. This is basic marketing 101. And think about it this way, right? There's a journey. Anybody who's going to buy from you at some point has to be introduced to you. And then they have to consider you. And then they have to really think about that purchase decision, not just emotionally, but in terms of what am I going to have to spend and what am I going to get in return? And all of that inches closer and closer to the bottom of the funnel. So you want to understand, well, what does that journey look like? What are the touch points? What are all the times I'm going to interact with that customer? Or there will be some exchange of information that I can hopefully capture in a CRM. And along the way, the pain points are going to be different. Because at the very top, the objection might be, I've never heard of you. At the bottom, it might be, this costs too much. Those are very different. And the way you respond is going to be very different. But you want to start to think about your customer base very differently, right? In the early days, your prospects are going to be defined very differently than leads. And eventually you might get into pilots where you say, hey, take a test drive of my product. We can give you, a promotion so that you could enjoy it with a little less risk. We think you're going to be happy and eventually become a customer and a satisfied partner. So then you need to align that to a process. And on the y-axis, I've got stage 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's going to be very unique to your business. On the x-axis, across the top, you can see that basically for every stage of the process, I want you to think about unique objectives for each. What are the activities that you are engaging in for each stage? The assets that you depend on internally, maybe there's a reference like, these are the questions I want to refer to when I'm meeting a potential customer. Externally, it might be, hey, here's a one-pager on my company, my mission and vision, right? You're going to take certain actions in your CRM, like recording certain information. Or if you have team members, maybe I need to notify this team member about what's happening since I was the one who took the meeting. Defining the qualifying steps is really important because at some point, if you want to take them from prospect to lead, and you're ready to say, hey, they're a lead now. There's a lot less leads, but I spend a lot more time on leads because they're closer to buying. Well, how do I know that they have objectively moved from prospect to lead? There are certain qualifying steps. And then stakeholders is a good one to think about. you might be a small team. It may be just you for now, but it's a good mindset because as you bring on team members, the flow of information and keeping people in the loop is always a good driver of goodwill in the business. It keeps your team happy. It keeps, the lack of flow of information is one of the most detrimental setbacks that a growing business can face, because not only does it slow down operations, but it can also create a lot of baggage in personal relationships. Quite frankly, if you hold back information from people, sometimes they get pissed, and usually they're right. So keep all of that in mind. I'm going to give you an example here. We're not going to go through it line by line, but imagine what it would look like if you have stages defined and each of those columns is populated uniquely. So when you get the slides afterwards, you can look at it and really compare and contrast. But I am talking about this level of detail because it really needs to be that important. You took that funnel and now you're aligning it to a sales process. And I mentioned earlier, right, those steps in the sales process are going to always be unique, but you could always refer to this model because this is roughly how I've seen it work at every company I've worked at, right? So what do the stages look like? There's a research stage where you're really trying to figure out what is the alignment between my ideal customer profile and my efforts at prospecting, because I'm not going to waste time on this if there isn't alignment. From there, that whole massive audience has been slimmed down to a smaller subset, and I start doing outreach. Of the people that I do outreach to, a subset of those is going to actually engage with me and take a meeting. And when I take that meeting, I want to be in the mindset of discovery, step 3. That means I'm asking every question I can think of that's going to reveal to me what they want. Because if I don't know what they want, I don't have a chance in hell of selling them on anything. And eventually, in step 4, qualification, I start to think about what they need and what I have. And if I can put those two together, and if I can really find that fit, now we have an opportunity. Step 5. And so now I've built up some rapport. Maybe I've just had the one meeting, hopefully a few others. We're starting to have rapport. If they're going to buy from me, they probably need to like me. They're not going to like me if I haven't built rapport. And so by now we're thinking, hey, not only do I understand you and what you need, not only do you understand what I'm offering and you're at least a little bit interested, but we agree that there's value in this relationship. And if everything is moving forward, by stage 6, you're negotiating. You're saying, all right, I'm offering you 10 widgets for 100 gold coins, and you're saying you're budgeted for 90. So let's talk about how we can either increase the value or decrease the price or do something to make you comfortable. And that's how we get to step 7, closing. So this is the funnel turned 90 degrees, right? Hopefully this gives you some idea of the human workflows that are powering everything that's in your system. So that's really kind of bringing a close to the discussion of how to take it from theory to practice. But I want to give you a case study just to sort of add some color to it, and then we'll wrap with some Q&A. So the ideal customer profile, I mentioned this earlier. This is one of those things that I think businesses overlook the importance and complexity of it. So if you ask yourself, what's my ideal customer profile? You might say, oh yeah, I sell sneaker restoration services, which means my ideal customer is someone who wears sneakers and wants them restored. Okay, that certainly will cut out a lot of dead weight. You don't want to sell to people who only wear loafers. And you don't want to sell to people who buy a new pair of sneakers every month necessarily, because they may just throw them out once they, get dingy and yellow. But maybe within that, there is a very precise definition of who you're looking for. And the 3 pillars of a good ICP, you want it to be very specific. So you want to think about every detail, every nuance about that customer that you feel strongly either they're in or they're out. You want it to be realistic. So you don't want to go out and think, okay, I sell floral arrangements and I'm going to go out and start selling them to all the Wall Street banks because I think they should have floral arrangements in their boardroom. Maybe they should. I think it would probably look really nice. But is that realistic? Maybe not. Maybe it is. Maybe I'm wrong. But flexibility is key, because if one day you did a bunch of research and you found out that all of those Wall Street banks actually do want flowers in their boardroom, well, you should have the flexibility to revise your ICP and all of your business operations will fall into lockstep. Good ICP has three components. Firmographic, this is the kind of data you can just get out there from doing research on the web, from using third-party data. It's not incredibly expensive, but you can find out, for example, hey, give me every company that has between 50 and 500 employees that is in the hospitality and travel space. And then you can get a big list and you can say, all right, let's filter those just by the ones that have US headquarters, right? And now you've got good firmographic data for your ICP. Demographic is when you drill down to the person and you start to say, okay, well, I sell to R&D, and I want senior people in R&D, so just VP or C-level. Okay, now you've got demographics powering that as well. The hard one is psychographics, because it's very hard to get that through desk research. You have to get on the phone, you have to get in front of them, whatever it takes, ask the questions to understand. I want those VPs of research and development who have an objective to innovate. They have the budget and the mandate to innovate, and they have a challenge that I can solve. Or they have a certain history of investing in leading edge solutions. That's the buying behavior. And that's a lot harder to get. If you have a flexible ICP, you have the ability to iterate this as you go. If you're successful, what this will help you do is target more efficiently, so you waste less money marketing to the wrong customer. You're going to allocate your resources better. Which means if you have a sales team or you're figuring out how much of your time to spend, you're going to put it towards the right things, and you'll just be more effective. More of those discovery calls will turn into demos, will turn into handshakes and contracts and the kind of thing that actually move your business forward. So how did I put this into practice? I'll give you one example. I worked at a company called Udacity. I mentioned earlier, they're a training platform. Today, they're part of Accenture. What we were selling was a virtual learning experience that we had a good business with consumers. So people would sign up for Udacity's platform if they were self-motivated to learn how to do full stack programming. And that was a good business. We were aggressively putting into enterprise with very good progress. And that meant, going to big organizations and saying, hey, why don't you just train an entire department to learn, skills of generative AI? Because every company wants to be good at AI. No one wants to miss the boat. Well, here's a way to train hundreds, thousands of people at once. The third leg of the stool where I came in was government. How can we tap into those government partnerships and establish a new line of business? And so we had done this in other parts of the world. In the Middle East region, we had seen that there was an effective business model working with governments and some, foundations, nonprofits, NGOs, and so on. How can we replicate that? The solution that we came up with was we need a real strong ICP that is tailored to the North American market. So what did we do? We engaged a data vendor to map that ecosystem. A lot of the data that mapped that ecosystem, understanding the workforce development boards, for example, that we wanted to approach. There are 500 plus workforce boards in this country. We needed to get this into the CRM to be able to manage it at scale. And in this case, the external data vendor, that data had to plug into the CRM. From there was certain data we couldn't just get. We had to go and do kind of an old school method of just scraping the mission statements and budget priorities. So if you decide to work with the state of Wisconsin, it was very helpful to go to the last governor's State of the Union address and see if they're talking about upskilling and reskilling and workforce development programs. And are they talking about it? Are they putting it in the budget? And once we did this with enough entities, we could start to compare and contrast and say, yeah, these are the ones where we want to spend our time. Start to build a profile of the best prospects. From there, we brought in more data and we digested the local needs. So what is the demand for technology talent in Wisconsin? There aren't a lot of Fortune 500 companies that are set up, that are headquartered there, but there are a lot of jobs, especially as remote work was taking over. And now you could hire someone in Wisconsin to do a job for a company down in Texas. We needed that data to be able to forecast those skill needs. So we layer on all of that data, and that allows us to further understand how we're going to prioritize these workforce boards and really double down on the ones where it makes sense to do the painstaking work of building relationships. And then we built this customer discovery framework. So how do we know the questions to ask? So everything we got upstream, we don't have to ask that anymore. We got that through, third-party data, desk research, et cetera. Now we're going to focus the precious time we have with these folks on the questions that we can only get answered from them. That's the psychographic piece of the ICP. And then the result was, once we had done all of this, we were so much more efficient with a small team and no playbook and very little marketing support. We were a lot more efficient in prioritizing our time on those communities where we knew we could make an impact. And as a result, what was, of course, a very lengthy process, as it always is in government, right? We were able to get pilots launched with workforce development. We learned a lot from that experience that allowed us to pivot and start working through economic development agencies who had access to different funding and worked in a different way with a different value proposition. And we landed some of those deals. And all of this happened in a little over a year, which really was like a strong success. So that really brings us full circle. The last thing I want to leave you with is some resources. So there's a white paper that's on the Mission Flywheel website where you can get a lot of data on some of the growth challenges that early stage founders and executives face. And you can see there on the numbered list at the bottom some of the different themes that we talked about. This might be a helpful, a helpful asset for you. It'll talk a lot about systems. It'll talk about how to put those systems to use. But hopefully this has been helpful for you, and happy in the time we have left to take any questions.
Could you touch bases on the customer success platforms?
Yeah, so I'll pull down the slides for now. I have to admit, it's not an area of major expertise of mine, but the way that they effectively work is to measure interactions. So imagine, differently from a CRM where you're just tracking data on purchase behavior and that sort of thing, a customer success platform is really looking at the experience post-sale. So how often do they engage with your product? How regularly do they show up to status meetings or a quarterly business review? If you're the type of business that has like a tech support offering, right? How often are they filing tickets? How quickly are you resolving those tickets? All of that ladders up to how much are these customers thriving on your platform, and it allows you to prioritize your customer success resources, namely your account managers, the kinds of people that are there to troubleshoot and upsell and do all of the things that take a customer from point A to point B. So you'll see some examples in the deck of platforms that are well known for this, and you'll find there's a lot out there to answer your questions.
Yeah, that's the only question I have. Also, I'm just looking forward to your presentation so I can look through it myself.
Absolutely.
Let's see this.
I have a comment really quickly, if I may. I think the chart that you had put together that breaks down sort of each stage of the sales process, I can't stress enough how important that is, and I'm so appreciative that you included that in just anecdotally in the consulting work that I do. Almost all of the businesses I work with have all of that in their head, and they can't grow because they can't hire and they can't train people on their processes. So simply the act of getting it out of your head into that chart, even if it isn't right, is a huge step forward in supporting growth. So if you walk away with anything, like, take it out of your head and put it in some format like this, because it will pay dividends in the long run.
Agreed.
Any other questions? Any other comments?
Just like, I'm eager to look through and read through the entire presentation.
And the definitely, like you said, like put it on paper, like the chart. It's definitely something I've been working on.
Yeah.
Awesome.
With HubSpot, I know you mentioned HubSpot. I just wanted to know, is it like a free trial or is it like how does that work?
HubSpot, it's better than that. It's actually, there is a free product that is free forever, basically. So provided you don't break through some of the limits, you could get away with the free product forever. I started my business on the free product. I knew I was going to graduate pretty quickly because as soon as I started doing really powerful stuff in the CRM, pretty soon you run into a scenario where it says, hey, if you want this feature, you're going to have to upgrade. Now, there are many, many levels of upgrading. And I've got a client that has 500,000 contacts in HubSpot and is using it in a very sophisticated way. In my HubSpot, for my business, I've got like 1,400 contacts, and I do a lot in it, like a lot. I pay like $23 a month. It's phenomenal. The amount of value, like it's probably my favorite thing in my business because the amount of value I get based relative to what I spend is just immeasurable.
Any other questions before we wrap up for today? Well, that was an absolutely awesome presentation. Thanks for I think this presentation did a great job of taking something that could be very complicated and overwhelming and making it like very actionable and clear about not only why to use it, but how to use this in a sustainable way. So I think this was really good. What'd you all think? Did you all get something out of this?
Yeah, really good. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure.
And if you want, Paul, you can send the deck over to me. I'll forward it to the leader. So
perfect. Well, it's been my pleasure. Wish you all lots of luck, and I think you're all sitting on a winner. So keep hustling. You got to have the hustle, but I know you got it.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks so much, Paul.
Best of luck.